Welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased to see so many people join for people who want to prioritize happiness. And also just a heads up, I know it's been a long week, so if anyone feels the need to turn off their cameras, that's totally fine. I know it can sometimes get tiring to have Zoom on all the time. So today we'll be diving in on adding clarity and intention to our plan for joy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shalvi Vaklu. I am the Senior Director of Data here at Strava, and I joined around 3 months back. The active prioritization of happiness is a very important concept for me. So I really appreciate this space to share this philosophy with all of you all. Okay, so first things first, just to set expectations, I have never attended or given a masterclass before, so please account for my newbie status. We're going to be talking about three main topics today. And after that, we'll have a little bit of time in the end for reflecting, where we can practice a few common methods. And then I'll also leave some space for open discussions. So the first step to getting better at something is, I think, in understanding it. And the understanding in this case begins by adding clarity around what we want. So, how do we actually begin building our awareness of ourselves, of the things that bring us joy, and of knowing what we want? Also, let me minimize Slack because it's distracting me. So, first up, I think I got interested in this concept when I first heard many years ago. This was more than a decade back, about Bhutan. So, for Bhutan, for people who are not familiar, it's a tiny mountain kingdom in the Himalayas. It's very close to India. And they, as a country, had this concept that they said, as a country, we don't just want to focus on the gross, the GDP of our country. Like, that's not going to be our only measure of success. Instead, we're going to think about the gross national happiness for our citizens. And that to me was a very fascinating concept, because at a country level, they decided to actually come up with a few metrics. They said, we're going to measure a couple of things. And I've linked out the reference notes here, but you can look it up. It's actually very fascinating. They have a lot of different things that they're measuring. And the big themes are around health, how people use their time, how people think of social relationships. Do they have time for those? Do they have growth opportunities? And what kind of living standards do the citizens of that country have? So I really appreciate, like, I think Bhutan as a country has really shown a lot of commitment to that whole concept of maximizing for happiness. I had the pleasure of visiting the country a couple of years back, and I'd seen a couple of, I mean, it is genuinely a very sustainable place to live. They really care about the climate. They care about having a good environment that people live in. You can see even in their sort of just the layout of the cities. There's places for people to come together and interact, to engage on culture, to engage on topics that they want to connect with other people on. And they have some pretty aggressive goals that they set. So, for example, related to the living standards piece, they said, we want to have at least 60% forest cover in the country, because it helps keep pollution down. Uh, it helps people be closer to nature, and they've like totally like knocked those goals out of the park. Like, I think last seen and heard they were at 75 or something, even for some of those goals that they set. And as a data person, I'm very fascinated. Like, what you don't measure, you don't have the capacity to succeed on. So they keep track of what's the median hours of working time that people have, how much time do people have to socialize, and things like that. So all of that has, I think, set a very interesting standard for how, as an aggregate, you can think about the happiness of a group of people together. So inspired by that, Bhutan actually partnered with the United Nations to put this concept at a larger scale. So United Nations, and I think in 2012, they came out with the World Happiness Report, which they release every year. And if you can see what they measure, like, it's pretty similar to it's kind of related to the stuff that Bhutan measures: life expectancy, social systems. The one interesting call out was that they split up the social relationships part into two, and they said we're going to see the social support systems as well as measure generosity, because they felt that as a concept, like a lot of research showed that people like being in situations that they consider where people are generous. It's not just generosity towards you, even you seeing your neighbor do something nice for your other neighbor, step up in times of need, like those are things that release sort of positive emotions in people. And so that's again a concept that they try to incorporate into the whole thing. So United Nations, of course, they've released the study every year, and they also have some greater takeaways from it, which is also very interesting to sort of read through. So we've kind of seen what is done on the aggregate when we think about large groups of people, but how do these concepts then translate to an individual? So I almost look at it as, some of these things that we saw the being measured at an aggregate. I almost sort of flipped it to say that, okay, what does that mean for me as a person? And how does that kind of help me anchor and figure out my own values of what I'm trying to maximize? So I think the one trend that we saw is that prioritizing health is almost it's almost a bare minimum threshold for a lot of things, and we can think about it as physical health as well as mental health. 2020 was definitely a year that people really felt that mental health needs a little bit of muscle building before you're put in these situations where you are facing a lot of very strange things. There's chaos, there's just rapidly changing situations, and all of that is something where building that resiliency, building that adaptability, building that system where you know how to seek help and get through these difficult circumstances is sort of really important to do. And physical health, of course, I mean, at Strava, we're all definitely very familiar with sort of the outcome of being able to prioritize physical health, physical activities. And we've also seen what happens in societies when you're not able to do that. So the thing that I want to sort of call out here is that as you think of your own self, be honest with yourself about um, what you want to prioritize on a regular basis. So I think there's always going to be a minimum amount that you need to do as a person that makes you feel well balanced. And there's always going to be something which is at a point of diminishing returns. So for example, meditation for an hour is great, but do you get that much extra benefit if you do 5 hours of meditation? Maybe not. But there might be some other reason you do those extra 4 hours. Maybe it's there's a social aspect to it, there's an engaging aspect to it, and the same thing often comes through for physical activity too. That there's a little bit that you need to do, there's a little bit that actually adds to your happiness, and beyond a certain level you're definitely trading off with something else that you can do, and that extra is not really adding all that much. The other aspect that again a lot of those aggregate calculations accounted for is just how people use their time. Time, as we all know, is a non-renewable resource. Once it's gone, it's gone. We have no way to get it back. So thinking about how we spend our time, and whether we make enough time to relax and rejuvenate, rather than waiting for that signal of, oh, now I'm burnt out and I can't actually I can't actually do anything else. So how do you sort of make sure for your longer term happiness that you build it into your normal schedule of regularly finding ways to relax, finding ways to be creative? It is, I think, very important part of our human experience to find things that challenge us in some way, that are not just sort of part of the ordinary every day, and allow us to try something new, maybe fail at it, maybe learn from it, maybe collaborate with someone else on. All of those creative pursuits are something that are very integral to our experience, and finding opportunities to do that is something that I think a lot of people want to be able to prioritize. And then also just to play, like just to sort of have opportunities to unwind, to have a non, it's it doesn't have an agenda. You're just trying to engage with people, or you're just trying to do something that is pure joy for the sake of joy. So having time to do those things is also something that people can think about actively prioritizing in their life. Next up, I think thinking about growth opportunities. So this is obviously, like, we're all working. We're a we're a working population, and in the as we sort of think about our opportunities, it's very interesting to sort of look at what opportunities we have. So I think meaningful work is something that can again really take away from your happiness if you don't feel that your skills are being effectively utilized, or you have the opportunity to contribute to something that you care about. So finding those opportunities and making sure that it meets your larger goals of what you're trying to do is extremely important. And keeping track of that, like, when does some opportunity stop adding that extra value? When do you not when you're stopping the learning path, that you're just sort of doing the same thing over and over again. You're not necessarily growing it in terms of your skills, in terms of experiences. And how do you sort of find a way to do that if that learning has stopped? Like, can you sort of find learning through some other channels? And I think the contribute part, like, that obviously exists at work, but I think it also exists in the larger society. So when we think about contribution, we all live in whatever location we're at. Think about your government. Do they actually care about your input? Are you living in a society that reflects the same values that you have, and are your values respected? And if they're not in alignment, how big of a deal is it? Like, is it something that you feel is very integral to your personhood, that this is misaligned with me? So do you have opportunities to change it, or do you have opportunities to change your own perspective? And if not, like, what do you sort of do with that information that you might gather? um, Next, I think money is obviously something that's very top of mind for folks. And I've sort of heard different perspectives on this. There's the more money, more problems camp, which, I mean, there's obviously a threshold there as well. Excessive money may be a problem, but I still also think that people do need a minimum amount to be able to sort of do the basic things that they want to. If you don't have a roof over your head, or your children are hungry, you're going to have suffering. And yes, there may be other things that bring you joy, but it is not worth it to sort of not at least optimize for those bare minimum things that you care about. Because money is a means to an end, and it can bring you a few things that are valuable to you. I think here the sort of thing that I probe people to think about is, what is it that you're trying to do with that extra money? Is like, a lot of people may be buying houses, but is that something that actually is something that you really care about? Or is it just something that everybody seems to be doing it, so you just feel like this is the natural next step for me to go and buy a big house? So think about, like, very actively, like, when you think about how much money you need, be honest with what will what will really add to your sense of satisfaction, versus what is something that you just feel you're doing just because that's the default way of thinking about it. So for me, I value vacations. Like, I want to have the time and the money to do that. I don't care about objects as much. I care about experiences. So that's something that at least helped anchor my thinking about what I wanted to do with my time and with my money. So the last sort of part of just thinking about just gaining our own awareness about what we care about is the social relationships, which I think is, again, a very, very crucial part of the human experience. Evolutionarily, we're all sort of programmed to sort of build that connection and closeness with those around us. It is something that has the capacity to, again, really add or take away from our experience based on how our different social relationships play out. And I don't mean that in the thing of like there is a difference between, I don't think everybody needs 50 friends. Some people just need that one person, or they do actually thrive with a lot of different social engagement. So I think it is a very personal style for a lot of people into what kind of social relationships they want to invest in, whether they crave that depth of connection or just having a lot of different stimuli. Like it is very personal how different people think about it. And I also think, like, I think a very common sort of trade-off that comes up for people is thinking about family versus friends, and then sort of triaging it with everything else that you could possibly spend your time on. So I hear a lot of people say that, for me, family is everything. Like family is the most important thing. And then they still take a job that requires them to travel 5 days a week. So it's kind of like, okay, if this is the most important thing, like how else are you thinking about it? Are you thinking about it as that I'm going to do this for a couple of years and then I'll be in a greater position to sort of not have to work as much and spend more time with my children? And that's perfectly fine. Like I said, it's a very, very personal decision, but it still begs the question that if family or friends are the most important thing, how do you restructure your life to make sure you're not just planning for that 10-year down the road path, and also thinking about the short term and sort of like the little boost that you need all the time. And people also make that trade-off between family and friends, that yeah, I just don't have time for my friends because I have so many family obligations. And that's fine, but 10 years later, if your family also needs something, if you didn't invest in those social connections, are you still in a position to even show up for your family because you don't have that larger support system that you kind of deprioritized? So that's the end of the first section. Next up, I wanted to talk more about sort of the intentionality of prioritizing happiness. And to me, a lot of that starts with just acknowledgement of the various things in our life and just how they play out. So I am a big believer of just very consciously and very regularly expressing gratitude. I think that is something that allows us to send signals out just to our own mind, and also to the universe, of just kind of reminding ourselves of this is something that I care about, this is something that I like, this is something that brings me joy. And I think that moment of gratitude sort of internalizes that thing in our own mind to seek out those similar positive experiences, because we have taken the moment to acknowledge that this situation, this person, or this thing gave me some amount of joy. So I think repeating it on a regular basis really helps clarify your own thinking about what it is that you care about, and I think it can add a lot of value to you. So on that note of gratitude, when you express gratitude to specific people, it definitely has the capacity to compound in terms of the feedback that you get from those people. So as humans, again, we go through our life interacting with so many people who have the capacity to really add positive experiences to our day. And sometimes they can they can take away from it by just a negative interaction that we had. So being regular and being intentional about expressing thanks when people do something which brings you joy, which is kind, which is generous, it's one a way to sort of signal to them that, hey, this is something that I really do like. It's a reminder to people about the positive things that they want to do. And again, it's a reminder for you to do it for others as well, that whether it was a colleague who did something nice for you, or the grocery clerk took an extra 5 seconds to bag your groceries in a really nice, neat way. Like those kind of things, they do have the value to compound if you express that gratitude and express that thanks at a regular basis. And the last step in the acknowledgement is to thank yourself, which I think is something that we should actively take the time for. Um, as a person, you have the greatest capacity to sort of to change your own experience, to improve your own experience for things that you care about. So if you have taken the time to advocate for yourself at work, or fix something that was causing you annoyance in your life, I don't know, the wobbly table, or whatever that it was, reminding yourself that you have the capacity to improve your experience in certain ways, and recording it and sort of making note of it, that this was something, and then I was able to do something about it and change it to a better experience, is again sort of self motivation for you to figure out more things in your life that you can kind of take ownership of, and just change it for the better. So some people do this through journaling, some people do this through sort of just recording various things that go by. And I think it can be a very powerful motivator. So the last step is acceptance. And here again, after you've built a little bit of your awareness, you've acknowledged the various things, sort of understood the status quo. Finally, accepting all of those insights that you've got are I think the next step to prioritizing joy. So in this, I think the first acceptance is again to just accept your own needs and accept who you are. You are an individual. Maybe your friend has different things that they care about. You might have very, very different things that are important to you. And whatever it is that is important to you is relevant. It does matter, and it is worth prioritizing. So I, for example, like this was a place where at least I benefited quite a bit, because I always felt like a misfit in a lot of ways. I inherently have an activist mentality, so I'm trying to change stuff, and I used to feel kind of very out of place. I'm like, I you know no like I used to think I'm doing it in the wrong forums, I'm doing it the wrong way, or I'm just sort of I used to just feel very misaligned. But when I accepted that, hey, that's just my personality, I see stuff, I want to do something about it, I'm passionate about a few topics that I really want to engage on. It really changed my perspective, and I just then changed sort of the opportunities that I took, and rather like made sure that those were aligned with me, that I wasn't putting myself around people who did not share the same values that I did. And I think that change in perspective, that yes, I was weird in in certain ways, but it was another way to be, it felt kind of reassuring to me, at least. The other part of it is to accept support. We're all human, and there is no expectation that we can handle everything that comes our way completely by ourselves. It is difficult to be vulnerable. It can be scary to think that you may ask for help and sometimes be disappointed, and that can happen. But you can also really be blown away by how much people are willing to show up for you. And you expressing that vulnerability, you asking for help, also makes it acceptable for other people to ask for your help when they need it. And I think that is powerful, because it compounds, and it is again, as humans, our experience is inherently social. We thrive when we are able to rely on each other to sort of improve all our experiences. And it is powerful to also give other people the opportunity to show up for you, to help you when you need something. The last part of this is to just accept happiness. So this one is also sort of, it had a personal sort of thing for me. I don't know if there's other Asians on the call right now, but at least culturally where I come from, happiness can also almost be a guilty thing at times, that oh, if how can I possibly be happy when my brother is going through a hard time? And it's almost something that people feel bad about expressing openly, because maybe if I accept that I'm happy right now, maybe that'll take away from my future happiness. That happiness today is at the cost of sadness or grief tomorrow, or my happiness is at the cost of someone else's happiness. And there, I think the thing to remember is that happiness is not a zero sum game. Your happiness does not take away from anybody else's happiness. If anything, happy people like other people to be happy too, and you're in a better position to sort of support someone when you and your needs are taken care of. And being happy today, like, just again, I think that it sets you up for, again, ensuring those continued positive experiences in your life for the future too. So if you have the privilege to have things that make you happy, don't turn it away. Accept it, and really, like, open your mind, open your hearts to let that joy in whenever possible.